Aperture is an adjustable opening inside your lens. It will allow us to control how much light we allow to reach the sensor. Just like in the bucket analogy, we can have a large hose, meaning a large aperture, allowing a lot of water to go into the bucket, or we can have a small hose with a small aperture in which not a lot of water will get into the bucket. Let's think about our eyes for a second. Our eyes have a pupil. That pupil is our body's way of allowing light to come into our sensor, the brain. So if there is not enough light in the environment, like a dark room for example, your pupil will dilate, it will get bigger. We can do the same with aperture. We can open our diaphragm, that's what it's called, the diaphragm inside your lens, to allow more light to come in. Or if there is too much light in the environment, we can make that opening smaller. The way we modify aperture in our camera is by shooting on manual mode. As we talked before, there's 5 things that we're going to be able to change. So aperture is one of them. We do that by changing the F number in our camera. Some people call it the F number, some people call it aperture, some people call it f-stops. Same thing. F-stops are a geometrical scale. As you can see, this geometrical scale relates to the size of the opening of the aperture. All you need to know, and I want to break it down very simple for you here, is that the bigger the f-stop number, the smaller the size of the opening. It is a little bit unintuitive. Higher f number, a smaller orifice, which also means less light will come in, and you will get a less exposed picture, or underexposed picture. You see how everything builds on top of each other? We talked about how exposure is the amount of light that reaches the sensor. Now I'm telling you how the F number, or aperture, can be adjusted to allow more or less light to come in. So the higher the number of the aperture, or the higher the f-stop, which is the same thing, the smaller the size of the opening, meaning less light will reach the sensor. So let me show you live how aperture works. John, I think you're shooting right now at f11. So f11 is kind of like a middle of the range size of the opening on John's light. So John, show them what happened when you change your aperture from f11 to f2.8. John just made his aperture much larger. Much more light is coming in. So I'm supposed to be right now, I cannot see it, probably much brighter. John, you're at f2.8. Let's see what happened when you go to f22. As you can see, John, from his camera, can change the aperture immediately to make it bigger or smaller, and it will affect directly the exposure of the image that you're seeing. As you change your aperture, or f-stop, to a larger or smaller number, we know that it will change your exposure. But that is not the only thing that changes. So if we need more light into a scene, because the picture is too dark, you need to reduce your f-stop. Go from, let's say, 11 to 8, or from 22 to 2.8. If you need less light into a scene because you're overexposed, then you need to increase your f number. That gets everybody confused right there. So let me say that again. If you need less light into a scene, you need to increase your f number. Remember, increasing the f number will actually reduce the size of the opening, allowing less light to come in. But that's not all. To make it a little bit more complex, something that is very simple, when you change your f number or your aperture, it will also change your depth of field. Depth of field is our number 3 of the big 5, and I'm going to explain that in details later. So all I need you to remember right now is that you can change your f number in your camera to allow more or less light to come in. If you got a higher f number, you get a smaller opening, less light coming in. If you have a smaller f number, the opening becomes larger and more light will reach your sensor, giving an overexposure of your picture or brighter picture. One little trick that is easy to remember is to know that as you move up one stop at a time on aperture, let's say from 2.2 to 2.8, you are actually decreasing the size of that opening by half. So every aperture stop on the scale decreases or increases the size of the opening by half. So you know that half the amount of light or double the amount of light will come in if you move up or down one stop on your aperture scale.